checking to see if we're on air. Luba?
Yeah.
Are we?
English. Tibetan.
Tibetan.
Sashi
Buki Jukshin Eto Tram Vira Vinshin Inde Padi Sangye Shindu Mike Uargi Drokunamda Shinga Chupasham Yiranguranamanda Kamyatayami
Sangye
Chudam Suki Chognamra Janchu Bardu Dakni Kyaksuchi Daki Chunyen Yipe Sonamki Drola Penshir Sangye Dupasho
Sangye
Chudam Soki Chognamra Janchu Bardu Dakni Kyaksuchi Daki Chinyangi Pe Sonamki Drola Penshir Sangye Dupasho
Sangye
Chudam Soki Chognamra Janchu Bardu Dakni Kyaksuchi Daki Chunyengi Pe Sonamki Drola Penshir Sangye Dupasho. Hey, welcome back, everybody. So 2 more classes today and 1 more. So we've been talking about going out into the forests, finding isolation of mind and body. We've been talking about going into deep meditation, as well as practices that we do during our day, walking around in the city, and how the practices of walking around during our day help to support the deep meditation, because if your mind is busy during the day and filled with a lot of mental afflictions, then when you go to sit on your cushion, it's going to be very hard to quiet the mind down and to get into a deep state of meditation. It's also true, though, that your sitting in meditation is a big support for your ability to do that, to be focused and concentrated enough to stay in the present moment and catch your mind going into mental afflictions, right? So if you haven't gotten some control over your mind, which is generally in deep meditation, then it's very difficult when you're in the midst of a very busy day to be able to catch your mind going into mental afflictions. So they support each other. Right? Important to do both. And then he talked about how when you do go into deep meditation, when you're in retreat, after a period of time, and he said generally around 2 weeks, your mind finally settles down and it leaves this vacuum, and often that's when people will begin to obsess about things. You'll begin to think about, someone who made you upset or something like that. And that's the time to bring in these practices of compassion, that compassion protects you from your mind going off into places that you don't really want it to go. Right? So one of those practices is learning to treat other people the way we treat ourselves. Right? You're supposed to begin to learn to feel other people's pain, to feel about other people's pain the way you feel about your own pain, which is a very difficult thing to do, and there are lots of arguments against it, right? So what naturally comes up in your mind is, well, yeah, but when somebody sticks me with a pin, you know, you go, ow. But when somebody sticks someone else with a pin, you know, it doesn't hurt you. You go, oh, I'm so sorry. But it's not the same thing at all, right? So Master Shantideva is going to give some reasons why you should feel other people's pain the same as you do yourself. So he says that we set these envelopes around ourselves, right? We have a definition of who I am and who someone else is. Like there's a border there that we make between ourselves and others. And that border is totally arbitrary. And he is again going to give several arguments for why we can break down that border and begin to see others as we do ourselves. And we can get to a point where we can actually feel that someone else's pain is just as intolerable as our own pain. You know, when I get a toothache, man, I'm running immediately for the drugs to stop that pain, you know. But when a friend of mine has a toothache, do I find them the drugs to stop their pain? You know. So we want to get to a place that we can imagine that someone else is ourselves, right? We can create happiness in their mind and we can take away their suffering. We can watch their happiness grow and it can bring happiness into our own hearts. And they say it's very liberating when you get to a point where you're not worrying about yourself anymore, you know, where you can let go of those worries and begin to feel free and happy. So contemplation 19, being beyond oneself. Suppose you say that the reason why you don't protect them is that their pain doesn't hurt you. Why then do you protect yourself from future pain, since it doesn't hurt you either? So are you your future self? Right? Can you feel the pain of that future self? You know, we go through planning for our future, right? We have 401ks, we have savings plans. You know, when we're young, we decide we have to go to college because our future self needs that, needs to have a good job, and needs to be able to save money, all of those things. So we spend a lot of time concerned about our future self and working to protect that future self. Master Shantideva goes into 3 different things about that. One is, you know, we might wake up in the morning and we have to go to work and we did something we know we're going to get yelled at for, right? So in the morning, we're very concerned about this me that in the afternoon is going to get yelled at by somebody else, right? But that afternoon you isn't the same you as this morning you, right? It's only a concept that you have in your mind about what's going to happen later in the afternoon, right? You're not there, you're here. You know, you don't know what's going to happen. You might not even make it to the afternoon, right? But we worry about that and we plan for it and we protect ourselves. My father died when he was 63 years old, right? He worked over 30 years with savings plans, you know, planning for himself in the future, and that future never arrived. Right? He never got to the point of retirement. The second one, in a 401k, why do we have savings plans for someone in the future? You know, you can't even begin to feel the pain of that person in the future, right? Our whole argument is I can't feel the same about you because I don't feel your pain, but you can't even begin to feel the pain of someone who isn't even going to exist for 30 years into the future, you know? You can't feel their old age, what it'll feel like to them. You can't feel poverty or riches. You can't feel any of those things. The diseases that you might get in the future, you can't feel any of it. So why are you putting that person as a priority over somebody who's sitting right next to you, who's got a cold and they need medicine, and you don't want to give them medicine because you don't want to spend money? Why do we put a priority to a future self that may not even exist and ignore the person that's sitting right there? And the third argument is, why would you worry about your future life?
You a little bit slow down, please.
So number one was,
Number one's okay.
one's okay. Two,
Two.
invest in the future you. Right? Can't begin to feel the happiness or the pain of that person. So we think this person in our future life is us, right? And we are planning for that person. As Dharma students, we're planting seeds so that that person will experience happiness, so that they will have money and prosperity, so that they won't be sick. But again, it's the same argument, this future person, you don't even know what they're going to look like. They might be born in another realm. They might be born on another planet. They might be an animal. They might be a god. You don't know. And here we are planning for them and ignoring the person sitting next to us, or the person we run into on the street or pass on the highway who has a car broken down. That person is here now. Why do we prioritize ourselves in the future, right? We can't even begin to feel their pain. So then another verse. In this class, he breaks it down into a lot of small verses. So we could do it as contemplations where you close your eyes, but it's really a lot of back and forth. So I think I'm just going to say another verse, and you can listen more carefully than you do to my words.
So what is number three?
Number three is your future life. You're worrying about your future life. It says that we're arguing that we don't feel other people's pain because they're separate from us. But who could be more separate from us than this future self, who won't happen for who knows how long and could be in such a very distant place? So the next verse. Your idea that you do so because you think to yourself that you will have to experience it is all wrong. Because the person who has already died is one person, and the one who has taken birth is another altogether. They could be male or female. They could be on another planet, as I said. They could be a god, they could be an animal, they could be in a hell realm. We don't know. But they're totally different than we are. So why are we worrying about them? So that future self exists only as a concept in your mind. They have no other existence than that in this moment. While there's people sitting next to you who might not have a jacket warm enough for this cold weather that we're having. Yeah. Why would we ignore them thinking about our future self? So I went to the commentary to read what they said about this. And I thought it was really interesting, so I'm going to read you what the commentary says. By the way, the logic presented here is meant to refute the idea. You know the word refute? To go against, to prove it wrong, right? The idea that because two people are separate entities, it is wrong to say that neither one of them is obliged to work to remove the suffering of the other. To accomplish this refutation, we present a parallel example involving two separate versions of one person at successive points in time. Do you understand the wording? It is not the, partly. We present an argument that gives you a person at this point in time and a person in this point in time, and we say they're different in the same way that you're different than me, right? So for the sake of argument, we're using this example, right? Is basically what he's saying. It is not, though, the intent of the root text here to deny the fact that in an ultimate sense, the successive versions of a person do constitute a single person. So basically he's saying we're not saying that this person and this person are two different people. We're only saying that for the sake of our argument. Right? So I know that comes up in my mind, and I think probably most of you do, but that's the same person in this continuum. And they're going to look at that argument a little bit later on. Okay, another verse. Now suppose that a particular pain was only something that a particular one had to care about. If this were the case, then a pain in the foot would be nothing for the hand. So why does the hand care? So we're still talking now about how we set a boundary and we call it one thing or another. And we're saying that we can't extend this boundary out to include a lot of other people because we can't feel their pain, right? Prick me and I feel it, prick you, I don't feel it. So he's saying, well, if you step on a thorn and the foot feels it, the hand doesn't feel it. So why should the hand care about it and reach down and pull the thorn out? They don't feel the same pain. So like if we are not willing to expand the border, then maybe we'll look at it in terms of we're a collection of parts and this one doesn't feel what this one feels, so why should we care, right? And it's all about the fact that we're setting these boundaries that are arbitrary, right? And we can change that boundary to include others or to become smaller and not include all the parts of me. If my foot were cut off, my leg were cut off, then me would be smaller than it was before, right? That concept that I have of me would become smaller. Yeah.
But for example, when you say about the hand and the feet,
Foot.
the foot, it came to my mind like a soldier that he was like in the war or something, and he has a injury in the leg, but because he has those boundaries, he can continue because he don't feel the hand don't feel the same pain that.
So are you saying that if a soldier had this idea in his mind, then his foot being hurt wouldn't stop him? He would be able to continue.
Yeah. Sometimes it's good to have those kind of boundaries. No?
To shift those boundaries, yeah. I think so. So again, from the commentary, I pulled this out of the commentary. Someone may make the following objection. The two cases are not the same. In the former case of myself and others, the two beings involved are separate and have no connection, right? The feet and the hands are of any one person, though they are one collection of parts. And the person in his younger and older years, or else in his previous and succeeding lives, are also one continuum. Therefore, in this latter case, it is logical that one of the members should undertake to remove the suffering of the other, whereas the former, it's not logical at all. So basically, the commentary is saying that an objection might be that because my present self and my future self are one continuum, or because the hand and the foot are part of one body, it makes sense that they would take care of each other. Whereas these are separate bodies, so it doesn't make sense to take care of them. Because isn't it the case that the thing we call a continuum or a collection are simply unreal? So we're setting this boundary. We're calling all of these parts, this collection of parts, a body. But they're saying that that's unreal. That's simply a concept of our minds. We have decided to include a certain number of things in this concept, right? So it's not real. So we're going to get into that. The next verse goes into that. So contemplation 20. We are only what we control. The things we call a continuum and a collection are unreal. They're like a string of things or an army. That of one with suffering doesn't exist at all. So who is he that could ever control it? So I don't totally understand that wording. I don't know if it confused other people too. But we're going to get,
Repeat this verse.
I'm going to repeat it, sure. The things we call a continuum or a collection are unreal. They are like a string of things or an army. That much I can understand, that of one with suffering doesn't exist at all. So who is he that could ever control it? So Geshe-la gets into this idea of a sokpa, which is a collection of things. They call it a sokpa. So me, I'm a sokpa because I'm a collection of parts. My sokpa is my hand, my foot, my leg, my eyes, my tongue, my nose, all of those things that I call me. That's my collection, right? My sokpa. We could say we are all one sokpa because we're all human beings, right? Human beings is a sokpa that includes all of us. Your country would be a sokpa, right? All of the different parts of your country would be a collection of parts that you put a label on and call it my country. And Shantideva here is saying that it's unreal. It's unreal because it is a concept that we apply to something, right? And that concept can change. Your country is this boundary somebody decided to place along a river or something, right? But it's not a real thing. It can be changeable, and it's just a concept on a collection of parts. An army is like that. An army is the foot soldiers and the navy and the infantry, and I don't know all the different names, but it's a collection of all the different soldiers that are part of the United States Army, right? Is it a self-existent army? Does it exist out there by itself, separate from our perceiving it? Is this me we call me, ourself? Is that self-existent? Does it exist out there without our perceiving it? So who decides that it's an army? Your mind organizes things in particular ways, and your mind organizes it as an army. Right? You are caused to see it as an army because of your past karma. Right? A dog comes into the room, the dog has no concept of army. right? People living in the Amazon, have no concept of army. And this is the same as our idea of our bodies, right? It's a collection of parts that we organize as our body due to our past karma. It's untrue that it's self-existently there, independent of your conceiving of it. You are the one that gives this soak meaning. We have ceremonies called soaks, and that's a collection of things that come together for the ceremony. But we're the one who give the soak of our country, the sokpa of our country or of our body meaning. It's nothing all by itself, right? It's artificial, it's fake, and you can decide to redefine it. And the way that you redefine it is the question, right? If I decide to leave this boundary right here, and I decide I'm only working for myself and only taking care of myself, is that going to make you happier? Right? Is that going to make your life better? We all know, because we've been doing that for a very long time, that our lives are not particularly happy because of it. And according to this system, your life will improve if you begin to expand that border. Right? If you bring other people in, if you use other people, the field of other people to plant the seeds for a better life in the future. So some people would say it's more functional to say that I end here, right? Because then I can have my 401k plan, then I can buy food for myself, then I can do all of these things. I can plan for my future. If I decide to start giving things away, I may end up on the street or something like that. It may not be as functional, if I don't plan for my future. But as I said, we've been doing that forever, and it isn't making us happy. It hasn't made our lives happy. So then someone might say that if I make this new boundary, all right, I decide to include everyone in the world, that has problems too. As we said the other day, I can't possibly buy shoes for everybody in the world. I don't make enough money to take care of everybody, So they say what you need to do is start small. You expand this boundary by the people that are around you. Maybe you take one person and you decide they're part of your sokpa, and you begin to help them and be kind to them. Right? And as you do that, as you expand from person to person, your life will start to get better. And you'll begin to notice that. If I'm being too fast. So then we go into a sokpa as a stream through time. And they think of this as like a rosary or a garland of flowers, right? One bead is not the next bead. They're not the same thing, but they're held together as a stream through time. But when your future life occurs, this life is gone. They don't touch each other. Right? It's only your conception that creates the impression that they're connected. Right? It's really moment, 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 moment without connection. And it's your concept that sees them as having a connection. So that makes it a sokpa. It's this collection of individual parts, right, throughout time. So then does it make sense for me to plan for my retirement, to hoard everything that I've got and not share anything, so that I will in the future have a stockpile of things, But again, that whole concept is fake. It's a concept, it isn't real. There is no future self, there is no future moment at this point in time. So does it make sense to ignore the person sitting next to you, right? When there is this artificial boundary? Is your future self more important than someone next to you who's hungry? You know, is that future self that doesn't exist anywhere but in your own mind more important than your friend who just twisted their ankle and needs help? You can't feel that person's pain. You can't feel your future self's pain. So why are you making a distinction there? So again, you know, it may be functional, we may think, but it's functional for me to, even though it's a stream of separate moments, it makes sense for me to save money so that when I get there, I have something to live on. But we all have heard stories of people who, I watched a TV show the other day, you know, stories of people who have invested all this money and it turns out to be a scam that they've invested in. So for 30 years, they put money into a bank and suddenly it's all gone, right? So would it not make more sense to put that money into the bank of other people, you know, who are here right now, with the idea that that's where you create the karma to have money in the future? We all know of people like my father who die before they ever get to retire. You know, they're saving, they're working for this later life when they're going to be able to take advantage of it all. And then they die and they never get there, you know. So we're planning and saving for something in the future and at the same time ignoring those people around us who are in need. So does that make sense? You know, where does that make sense? And like our government right at the present moment is passing laws that will take a whole lot of money out of Social Security, right? So I've worked my entire life paying into this fund called Social Security so that when I get old like I am, you know, I'll have some money coming in every month. But now the government's going to change, right? And that's going to change. The amount of money we get is going to change. So was that really a good savings bank? Was that really worthwhile to plan for that, right? And if you do that and at the same time ignore those around you who need something, then according to this system, it totally doesn't make any sense at all, right? The way to have money in the future is to be generous with people right now. And that generosity will bring you money and security in the future. You know, Geshe talks about the HR person at his place of work who would come to him and say, you've got to start putting money away. We've got to, let's set up a 401k plan. And he said, I am planning for my future. You know, I'm planting the seeds in that bank of other people so that in the future I will have everything that I need. And it seems to have worked for him. So it reminded me of that saying, and I don't know if you from other countries have this saying, but it's the best laid plans of mice and men are often put asunder. Like we can make whatever plans we want, but often when that moment arrives, something else happens entirely, right? All of your plans go to waste and you do this new thing because something different has occurred.
An aspiring question. Should we put money into bank, or should we share money, or should we use aspirin when we have a headache?
You know the answer to that question. Should you?
It means it doesn't mean that we just need to give away all our money and wait. It means we can do both.
We can do both. We can put money in the bank to save for our future.
Yes,
and we can share. Yeah, that comes later. Yeah. And that idea is, oops, we'll get to that later. Okay?
Mhm.
Okay. So Geshe then says, so, maybe you do invest your money, and maybe there isn't any fraud, maybe the government doesn't change, and maybe nothing like that happens. So then you get to be this old person who has money, but their body's falling apart, they're going to die, they get diseases, and, what has it really helped? They still suffer and they still die, right? So we can make all the plans that we want in that way, and we're still going to get old, sick, and die. But with the other system, where you're planting seeds in the garden of other people, you can make your life happier and happier. You can make your life free of suffering, of diseases. You can have all the money that you need, all the security that you need. So again, how we define ourselves now, it's totally arbitrary, and we can change it. We can broaden it, we can make it smaller, we can do whatever we want with it, right? People will fight for their country, which is an arbitrary line in the sand. They'll go out and they'll kill other people to defend their country. People will fight for their cultural identity. They will harm other people in order to maintain their cultural identity. We will do all kinds of things that are negative and hurt other people in order to maintain our sense of self or to protect ourselves, right? We can define ourselves in other ways, like I'm a feminist, and I'm going to fight all those people, who put women down, or I'm an ecologist. There are many, many different envelopes that we use all the time to define ourselves, right? And all of those are simply concepts in our mind that are arbitrary, that we decide upon. So why don't we decide upon something that's really going to help us? Decide upon something that's really going to help other people, right? A lot of those ways we define ourselves create a lot of suffering in our lives and in other people's lives. So it doesn't work. Taking care of yourself at the detriment of other people doesn't work. Right? But if you give away your resources, if you help other people, right, that can lead to happiness and eventually to enlightenment. So this idea of sokpas, of defining things, defining collections of things in terms of something static like your body, or in terms of something like a stream into the future, right? It's all arbitrary. It's all this concept in your mind, right? We get to choose between selfishness or generosity. Right? One leads to happiness and one leads to suffering. So what is it you're going to choose? The Dalai Lama says that taking care of other people is enlightened self-interest, right? When you're taking care of other people, when you decide to expand that boundary and include those other people as yourself, it's really taking care of yourself, right? It's really going to lead to a better life for you in the future. So some people would say, okay, so I agree, defining myself as this, it doesn't work. I'm fighting all the time to take care of myself and I'm not very happy. But why, I can't quite believe what you're telling me, that taking care of other people is going to make me happy. So how do I know that? How do I prove that? So Geshe says, try it, And I know I've talked before, when I first came here, people were doing experiments. This one woman who gave chocolate chip cookies away, as an experiment. Let me see what happens if I do this. And then within a month or two, every place she went, people offered her chocolate chip cookies, right? You can do an experiment, you know, try for a period of time. He says, like, try for 6 months, expand your boundary to include at least one other person, you know, expand it even further than that, and try. You know, every place you see a need, fulfill that need, you know, and see what happens. And he says, if you do it sincerely, he said, if you don't kind of tweak the practices to make them what works for you, because, you know, you're selfish and you don't quite want to give so much, it won't work. But if you follow the practices, if you really try sincerely for a period of time, you'll begin to see your life change. Probably that's so for some of you here, right? That you've been working with this for a period of time and you can see that things are getting better. Okay. So we change things by planting the seeds to see things differently in the future. Next verse. Since the one who owns a pain does not exist, there can be no distinctions among then any. If something is a kind of pain, then it's something to remove. What use in saying that it's fixed here? You can't continue your argument of asking why the pains of all are something you must stop. If you're going to stop it, then you must stop all of it. If not, then my pain is like any other being's pain. So the argument here, I think, is that if myself doesn't really exist, right? It's only a concept, and yourself doesn't really exist, then how do you distinguish the pain, right? If neither exists, then pain is just pain, right? Whether it's my pain or her pain, whether it's my pain or your pain, it's just pain. And therefore, wherever there is pain, we should try to stop it, right? And if you're not going to do that, then why would you stop your own pain, right? Pain is pain. There's no distinction between yours and mine. Why would we distinguish? You know, why would we do that? The pain that someone is feeling is something I must rightly work to remove for the single reason that it is a kind of pain. Your own pain is not something that you ever wanted. Nobody wants pain. In that way, we're all the same. So why would I take care of mine and not yours? And if I'm not willing to take care of yours, why should I be concerned about mine? So then Yeshua said that this is called Delam. And he said that Delam is easy path, right? And basically, if we begin to see other people as ourselves, then all we're doing is taking care of ourselves, and that's easy. Right? It shouldn't be hard. No harder than taking care of yourself is, anyway. Right? And then he says, you should not put up with mental afflictions anywhere that they exist in your environment. You know, they exist in your own mind and you think I should take care of this, but if they exist in someone else's mind, we think we shouldn't. But he said you have to. You have to take care of mental afflictions wherever you see them. And he says this doesn't mean you go and you force your opinion upon someone or you try to make them change, you know, but you try to help them in whatever way you can, in whatever way they're open to your help. Right? And for me, this goes back to that whole idea that if I'm seeing pain and suffering out there, where is it coming from? You know, we've said this over and over. Where is it coming from? It's coming from my mind projecting it out there onto another person. So if that person is feeling something, it's coming from me, and I need to stop it. I need to try to change it in whatever way we can. And then someone says, but I don't feel like I know how. You know, I don't feel like I have the wisdom to know what would help this other person. And they say, just do the best that you can, right? Do what you do know. And this gets into that whole idea. So there's a Bodhisattva vow that says, don't teach emptiness, the higher forms of emptiness, to people who aren't ready to hear it, right? We went to a Thanksgiving dinner, my daughter and I, shortly after my daughter had started coming here. And my sister asked, you know, what is it you're learning there? And my daughter started explaining and got to a point where my sister said, what? Are you trying to say that things don't exist? You know, and it was like, okay, we'll back up from that stance. You know, we'll talk about this in a very different way, because we were creating more harm than good and talking about it, right? So you may not know the capacity of the other person. You may not have the wisdom to know if they're ready to hear it or not, but you do your best judgment and you present it, and then you work with whatever it is that happens, right? And they say that it's not, you should look for where I wrote this down. The benefit of your actions is dependent upon your motivation, not on the success of your help, right? So you may not be successful in convincing the other person. You may not be able to help every person in the world. And that doesn't really matter. What matters is that you try. What matters is you have the motivation to help. And that's changing your own heart and your own mind, which is where the work really is, right? And then Geshe said something that I thought was really interesting, because I don't know if I've heard him say this in quite this way before. And I believe he's talking about the Majjhimika Prasangika school when he says this. And this has to do with that whole idea of, if everything is our projection, you know, then the suffering we see out there is something that we have to work on, right? Because it's coming from us. He says, do we believe in outside physical matter? No. But within our projection, is there outside physical matter? Yes.
Repeat, please.
Do we believe in outside physical matter? No. But within our projection, is there outside physical matter? Yeah. To me, that's like, okay, we believe everything is a projection of our own mind. But does that mean that Ale doesn't exist? No, she exists there. If she stood in front of a car, which is also a projection of my mind, a moving car, and she got hit, she could be killed, right? So outside physical matter exists within our projection, right? So all of the other people that I'm perceiving exist within my projection, but the way that I'm perceiving them is based upon me. So if I'm perceiving suffering, right, that's coming from me, and I need to work to change it. And how do I change it? By helping, right? By reaching out and helping. And that changes my projection into the future. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So working on the benefit of others brings us happiness, right? It makes them happy. It creates happiness in us in the moment and creates happiness for our future. working for ourself to the detriment of others creates suffering. Right? Anything I do something for myself that hurts somebody else will bring suffering in the moment, and it brings suffering in the future. And the more you practice caring about others as much as you care about yourself, the more your conventional reality will change, and the happier you will become, and the happier other people around you will become. Right? You will have more and more pleasure conventionally. So suppose that we get to a point where we can see all other beings as ourself, right? We say, my concept at the moment of myself as being this is only a concept, it's unreal, right? It's a sokpa. I can eventually get to see everybody as part of myself. Is that any more real? It's also a concept, right? And it's also unreal.
It seems that you can choose what you like to believe in.
You can choose what you want to believe in, although, you know, it comes from your karma.
Your karma forces you.
Your karma forces you to see it, so you work towards changing that karma. I mean, that's a whole big question. Like, where is there free choice within all of that, right? Right? If you're forced by your karma to see everything, does your karma allow you free choice then to be able to change that concept into something else? Right? Have you created the karma to have free choice in the moment to change your concept of things?
If you can't change this just now, you can cease to change it. Wait, just try to.
Yeah, I mean, basically.
Just study ACI 11.
Right. Yeah. Basically, we can't change it right in this moment. I can want to see everyone as myself, but right at the moment I don't. You know, so I'm planting all the seeds to be able to see that in the future. Yeah. So this very broad concept of everyone as yourself isn't real, but it functions very well to bring you to greater happiness in the future and to enlightenment. So contemplation 21, the power of habit. By accustoming yourself to the idea, you have learned to think of a few drops of semen and blood that belong to other people as being yourself, even though there is no such thing at all. Why then do you say you cannot think of the bodies of other people as being yourself as well? There isn't any difficulty in deciding that the bodies of other are your own body too. So this is about other parts of other bodies. Are you? You know, where is it that we conventionally come from? You know, inside our mother, a few drops of semen and blood, you know, an egg and a sperm come together, and this you begins to grow. But isn't that parts of other people's bodies? You know, and when you're a fetus, you might think of it as you being a fetus, but is it not part of your mother's body? You know, there's a whole debate legally in the country of when is this a separate person? You know, is this a separate person from conception, or is it a separate person when it can actually survive outside of the mother's body as its own body? You know, so, you know, we are conceiving of this as me, but is it? It's actually part of other people's bodies. So why can't we continue to feel that once we're outside of the mother's womb? You know, why can't we then continue to conceive of other bodies as our own? So again, we're told over and over and over again in this that we can change those conceptions to include whatever it is that we want. It's only habit and it's karmic projection that you consider a particular egg and semen to be you. right? Or a particular body to be you. And then when you're a child, your mother calls you Mary Ann, your father calls you Mary Ann, and they do it over and over and over again, and pretty soon, I'm Mary Ann. That's my concept of myself now, right? I don't know, when my first baby was young, and I would hold her against my body. It was really like she would melt into my body, and these two bodies were one. So even out of the womb, it felt like that. I don't think I've ever felt an adult, my husband, my lover, ever quite melt into me the way I felt a baby melt into me. Right? So we have these labels, right? The projections of our karma. Seems like perhaps it's time for a break. Okay. We'll take a break, and then I'll tell you about something I saw on Facebook today. Right. When I was supposed to be prepping for the class. Okay. You can turn up the heat.
Michael says about the green smoothie recipe. Thanks for doing that. By the way, Mexico is the greatest country on earth.
Where are they?
Baja
La Paz, not
and La Paz.
La Paz.
You need it all the way there.
Well, they flew. They crossed the border in Ciudad Juárez. It's the cheapest way to travel in Mexico.
Where is Juarez?
El Paso, Texas. Just cross the border.
Yeah, I bet it's beautiful down there right now.
With February, you can see all the windows.
Oh, it's February, not yet.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
In La Paz?
In La Paz, and the wheels travel from La Paz to Puerto Vallarta, and in Puerto Vallarta you see them in February.
Is it too hot for you? So I had wanted to say and forgot that most of us have a habit of when we hear something. I'm very good at this. We have a habit when we hear something, we tend to like come up with objections, reasons in our mind why it doesn't make sense to us, right? So that often we don't even really listen to the other person because we're already coming up with things why it isn't workable, you know? But there's another way of doing it, and that's if you from the very beginning assume that there is some merit here, that something in what they're saying is true, then you can listen in a very different way, right? You can listen more intensely, right? You don't have your mind working against it the whole time. You're looking for, what about this is going to help me? What about this is really true? Right? And for me, some of these arguments seem very simplistic. And Geshe says many, many people think these are just so simple. You know, these don't really make that much sense. He says you completely miss the point of it. You know, it goes over your head. But if you can really take some time to think about them, or to think, you know, in what way is this true, then it will be much more helpful for you.
We have to meditate.
Yeah, to meditate about them. Yeah. So today on Facebook, which I was watching because my daughter posted something, right? I get notice my daughter posts something, so I go on Facebook and then I get caught in it, right? And I don't stop. But there was a story about Christmas and Santa Claus, right? And it's about working with your children, because I don't know if you do this in other countries, but our children totally believe in Santa Claus for a period of time. You know, this being who comes and brings presents, who just wants to make everybody happy, you know, but there comes a point where either one of their friends tells them that he doesn't exist or something like that. You know, they begin to wonder, they catch their mother putting something under the Christmas tree, you know. My daughter went out to my car, and hidden under blankets were the presents, right? And she went in and she took presents and opened them up and looked at what they were. But this article said that when your child begins to suspect, you know, then it's time to take them out to Starbucks or something, right? Take them out to dinner and sit and talk with them, you know, and you say, you know, I've noticed how much you've grown. You know, I notice how much you're growing up. And I've noticed also that your heart seems to be growing up. You know, your capacity to care about other people. I noticed that you did this for your cousin and it was very beautiful, you know. So I feel like maybe it's time for you to become Santa Claus. You know, I feel like maybe it's time that your heart has gotten so big that you can now become a Santa Claus. Said you might have noticed that, you know, there are people who are playing Santa Claus in the stores, you know. But your heart is now at that place where you can also do this, you know. So think about somebody. Think about somebody that you know, and think about what it is that they might need, you know. And this woman's son thought about a neighbor. They called her the witch who lived down on the corner because she would yell at the kids. She didn't want anyone coming in her yard. When a ball would go in her yard, she'd come out and she'd yell at the kids. And he said, I noticed that this woman comes out even on very cold mornings in bare feet. She doesn't have any slippers. So I would like to get her a pair of slippers, you know. And the mother says it's very important that as a Santa Claus, you don't let anybody know what you're doing. You know, you do this anonymously. So he bought some slippers and he wrapped them up and he went to her house and snuck them under the gate, right? And then they watched, and the next morning she came out and found this present there by her gate, you know, and she picked it up and went back into her house. And they watched again the next morning, and she came out with the slippers on, and he felt so good about doing this, it just really brightened his heart. So that's kind of what we're talking about here in this class, right? It's how do we become Santa Claus? How do we create these beautiful things for other people? How do we expand our heart to include all of these people that maybe we don't like very much, but we see that they have a need, right? How do we do that? Isn't that beautiful? So this concept of who we are is infinitely changeable, right? This concept of who we are can become anything, right? We can all become Santa Claus. So why not begin to see others as yourself and to make them happy, right? Many of us have had an experience of falling deeply in love, and that for a short period of time at least, that other person is just like us and we want to make them happy so bad. We will do almost anything to make them happy, right? So why can't we do that for anyone else? We can expand our envelope of self to include other people. It's an arbitrary line. So that finishes our talk about seeing other people as ourselves, where we put equal priority on ourselves and other people. We make them as important as we are. So the second practice we're going to talk about is exchanging ourselves and others, which is another practice for gaining bodhicitta. It's interesting for me when he said that. It's like, oh yeah, that's what we're doing. Our spiritual practice is looking for direct perception of emptiness and this experience of bodhicitta. So what we're doing by expanding ourselves to include everybody else is, trying to get to that experience of bodhicitta in our own hearts. So in that previous practice, we were working on the equality of self and others, right? Doing away with pain and bringing more happiness in. So this practice, he says, now we will move our concern for ourselves to concern for other people. We'll do this exchange, right? Other people are exactly the same as me. I don't quite understand the difference. So His Holiness the Dalai Lama says that it's really the only democratic thing to do. He said, when you think about it, there are 8 billion other people, and there's only one of you. So wouldn't it be the democratic thing to think about them instead of thinking about yourself? Right? The majority is out there. There's only one little me. Right? So if you're going to be democratic, if you like that idea, you're going to think about them first. Right? So we're going to put ourselves in the bodies of other people and take care of our own needs. So, verse, contemplation. Come to understand that for myself it is wrong, but for all others, an ocean of fine qualities. Discard completely your habit of caring for yourself and learn to take on every other being. When you think of your hands and such, do you consider them all a part of your own body? So why then don't you consider every creature that has a body as being one of the parts of the body of all living kind? That's our larger sokpa, the body of all living kind, not just humans, but all living kind. says self-cherishing is wrong and cherishing others is right. Self-cherishing brings suffering. Cherishing others brings happiness, brings an end to suffering.
How do you spell cherishing?
CHERISHING.
Mm-hmm.
Chair, CHERISHING. Contemplation 24 on the definition of myself. Because you've gotten used to it, you're able to think, it's mine, of this body, which actually has no self. Why do you say then that you could never learn to think of others as me if you got used to it? If you could then, you would never feel that it was strange nor conceited when you worked for others. You don't expect congratulations from yourself whenever you eat your dinner for yourself. So if we're able to shift this concern for myself to others, then when you go to feed yourself, you would feed others, you know. When someone was hungry, you would feed them. When someone was hurt, you would help them because they are you, right? And you can get to a point where taking care of others is no big deal, right? It's only a matter of habit. It's only a matter of shifting this boundary. It's only a matter of having concern for others the same as you would for yourself, right? It's no big deal. When you put a Band-Aid on your finger doesn't say thank you. You know, when you feed yourself a meal, you're not congratulating yourself, look what a good deal I did, you know. And so when you feed somebody else, it's no big deal. You know, it doesn't require any hoopla. You don't need to get conceited about it. Whoa, I'm such a good person, look what I did. You know, because all you're doing is feeding yourself. And it can become so much of a habit that you don't even think about it. You actually do see them as yourself. When you scratch your back doesn't go, ooh, thank you. Okay, verse. For that reason, you must get used to a state of mind where you protect all beings, and to thoughts of compassion as well, protecting them just the same way that you protect yourself. Protect yourself even from the least unkind word. And then the next contemplation, the enemy of the body. It's 25. Because of your attachment for your body, you feel great feelings of fear for little frightening things. Since this body then is a source of terror, who then wouldn't despise it like they would some hated enemy? And the next contemplation, 26, is on the evil that we do for our bodies. We spend our days to find a technique of curing those illnesses of the body, like hunger and thirst and the rest. To do so, we slaughter birds and fish and wild beasts of the forest too. We lay in wait at crossroads for it, for profit and to win the honor that gives us, to win the honor that gives us. We would even kill our parents, stealing also those belonging to the triple jewel, and then pass on to burn in the hell of endless torment. What wise man would ever then desire this body, care for it, and make unto it offerings? Who is it that wouldn't see the body as the enemy? Who then not disdain it? So one of our objections to letting others go first, to letting others be the first in line, to letting others have the maple donut, to not giving the last of something to someone else, is that it hurts our body. What if I'm hungry because I've given something away to somebody else? But this body of ours creates so much suffering for us. I mean, sometimes I can't believe it. I just had breakfast 3 hours ago and now I'm hungry again. And I have to do all this work to eat something else, We have to go to town every week or two in order to get food, I have to work to get the money to feed the body, and how many people do harmful things to others in order to take care of this body, How many people know, just the other day there was one cookie left over there, and I hadn't had one of those cookies left. And I actually had this debate with myself. I probably should leave this cookie. Well, how about if I leave half of this cookie? Maybe someone else would really like to have a cookie, but I really want this cookie, So I'm willing to let somebody else who wants a cookie not have it because I want it myself. Right? I had this really wonderful thing happen today. One of the retreaters sent a message to me that, he's run out of things and he was really not expecting, but he really has this sweet tooth. And he wondered if we could get him some sweets the next time we go shopping. So I put what sweets I had around my house in a bag with some other things for him, and I took it and I left it for him, right? And then the next morning I woke up and boy, I wanted something sweet, and there wasn't anything sweet in my house to have because I had just given it away, right? And then within 20 minutes, half an hour, I get a text. I've made some brownies for you. I'm bringing them over. So my karma of giving, came back to me very quickly. I only had to want something for 10 minutes before it manifested itself. It was great. So there are 5 ways in which the body is an enemy of you, right? So the enemy is your body if you push others out of the way, it says. Number 1, animals to feed this body. Right? You've just done a lot of harm to another being in order to take care of yourself. Number 2, lay traps for other people. Lay traps for other people. They didn't explain what this one meant, but what arose in my mind was that there may be some people who want to get someone else in trouble. And so they do something that they know will get this other person in trouble. It's hard for me to think of what that might be. But like at work, maybe this person was supposed to do something and you make it appear that they didn't so that they would get into trouble. Or you're supposed to give them a message to do something and you withhold that message so that they won't do what they're supposed to do and they'll get into trouble. Something like that. Those are the things that came to my mind. Number 3, you would even kill your own parents. If it meant saving yourself.
The traps, it's also you would just steal things from us, like the powers of the street.
Oh, right. So you lay a trap by doing something that would
hiding and
right them. By hiding and then catching someone to rob them or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
How do you spell it?
Which trap?
Lay a trap?
L-A-Y, lay, A, and then trap, T-R-A-P. So I guess like fishermen Or on the East Coast, they catch lobsters by putting traps in the ground, right? Or a hunter might put a trap out to catch an animal. Yeah. And then 3 was kill even your own parents, if it meant it would save you from something. Number 4, steal from the 3 jewels, right? Steal from a Dharma center, steal from a church. And then all of the above things would lead you to number 5, which is burn in the lowest hell of no respite. So the things that we do to preserve our own bodies will lead us to those things which could take us to hell realms. And then people also are seeking fame for this body, and they'll do all kinds of things to hurt other people to get it. And then Geshe-la talked about like walking along and seeing a snake, right? And being very frightened by that snake. And the only reason to be frightened by the snake is because it might hurt this body, right? But this body causes us so much suffering. You know, the things that we do for this body create so much suffering for us that we should begin to see it as an enemy, right? This body is going to get old, it's going to get diseases, it's going to die. So why should we be hurting other people in order to preserve this body? Doesn't make sense. Contemplation 27. If I use it myself, what will I give to others? So thinking of yourself and saying, if I give these things, what will I have for me? Is nothing but demonic. To think of others and say, if I use this for myself, what will I give? Is angelic dharma. So here he gets into the idea of angels and devils, right? And what is the devil, right? And they say the devil is those selfish concepts of taking care of yourself before others. You know, I need this for myself. I'm going to keep this for myself, and letting other people hurt when you could be helping them. That's the devil speaking in your own mind. Whereas the angel would be that voice that says, you know, I could keep this for myself, but then what am I going to give to others? You know, how am I going to be able to help other people? So they say the angel would be when you begin to take a bite of something and you say, wait a minute, have I made sure everyone else has what they need first? You know, if I take this last cookie, you know, is there someone else who's going to really want a cookie? Shall I leave some of it for them, or shall I leave the whole thing for them? That's the angel speaking in your own mind. Right? If I use this for myself, I will have nothing to give away. So we have to begin to learn to use what resources we have for the benefit of other people, for helping other people. So here they get into this Bodhisattva ethic, which was what you were bringing up before, right? Which says, so should I take everything that I've got and give it all away? You know, is that going to help me? You know, it's going to help you in that karmic sense that you are helping other people, and therefore you're creating the karmas to have things in your future. But we also have to consider, if I give away everything I own, am I going to be out in the street and become a burden to other people? You know, if I give away all of my clothes, will I be able to go and teach the Dharma? Or is it important for me to have some things so that when the need arises, I can be helping people, right? Should I, you know, you have to be constantly evaluating, right? What is the best thing to do with the resources that I have? Right? And Geshe-la talks about Ken Rinpoche in the years that he worked with him, and Ken Rinpoche would get donations from people and he would save them. He was very frugal with himself. He had what he needed, but he didn't spend a lot on himself. He had this really old car that Geshe-la had to try to fix. Right? But he would save money. He wouldn't just give money out the moment it came in, because he knew something was going to come along that really needed that money. And when that thing came along, he had the money to be able to give it, right, for a really good cause. Maybe to create a teaching in Thailand or something like that, maybe to be able to rent a place where you can go and give the teachings. So it's very important for us to take care of ourselves to the extent that we don't become a burden to anybody else, right? We need to have a place to live. We need to have clothing to wear. We need to have food to eat. But we don't need to have all of the extras, right? So to make sure that you're providing for yourself and not being a burden to anybody else, and then to be generous with everyone that you come upon, to not be so frightened of your future that you don't help somebody who needs help. Right? And maybe you've got a Dharma project that you're working on and you need to have a certain amount of money to make that happen. Maybe then it's okay to save that money, to not spend it foolishly, to not just spend it on anything that comes along, but to make sure that you're picking and choosing the best things in the way that's going to benefit people the most. And to constantly also work on expanding your generosity, right? Expanding your heart. The places you're feeling stuck and you can't quite give, maybe then it's a wonderful opportunity to give, because that will expand your heart. That will begin to weaken your mental afflictions and your selfishness. Contemplation 28. So Geshe-la says these are some of the most important verses in Buddhism, and it would be very good to memorize them. And probably we've heard it before. And this contemplation is called "Not Many Words Are Needed." The total amount of happiness that exists in the world comes from wanting to make others happy. And the total amount of suffering that exists in the world has come from wanting to make yourself happy. What need is there for many words? The children of the world work for their own sake. The able Buddhas do their labor for the sake of others. Come and see the difference. The total amount of happiness that exists in the world comes from wanting to make others happy. The total amount of suffering that exists in the world has come from wanting to make yourself happy. So then, people say, but wait a minute, there must be things in the world that don't come from karma. Are you saying that earthquakes and hurricanes come from karma? Are you saying that the bird's song outside comes from karma? Or the pleasant sound of the wind in the trees? Or of the ocean waves? Does that all come from karma? Yes. Everything that gives you a pleasant feeling, everything that causes you pain, it all comes from karma. It all comes from how you have treated other people. And if that's true, would not it be tremendously beneficial to expand your heart to include everyone? Would it not be tremendously beneficial to see other people as yourself? and to exchange yourself for others. So we should take every opportunity to do that. And he says most bodhisattva acts are not like these great and glorious acts, right? Are not giving our flesh to the tiger, something like that. That most bodhisattva acts are the small acts that you do every day to help the people around you. You know, whenever something arises around you and you can do something, you should do it. Begin to change your capacity for helping others. Begin to change your capacity for loving others. Begin to change that capacity so that you could eventually have the capacity of a Buddha to love all beings as you love yourself. So that that bodhicitta can arise in your heart. You have to start with what's around you. Mother Teresa starts with the first person she sees on the street, right? Picks them up and brings them and helps them. Right? And it's easier somehow in our minds, you know, we can sit there and we can pray for all beings and we can get this wonderful feeling in our heart, you know, I'm expanding out to include all beings. You know, we can do those visualizations and bring all beings in. But when it comes to helping the person that you were upset with yesterday who just hurt their foot, you know, maybe our heart goes, ugh, a little bit. It's not so easy when it's the person that's there that maybe you're not so fond of. You know, your aunt so-and-so who makes you feel creepy when they kiss you on the cheek or something, you know, do you really want to help them? You know, but that's the place. That's the most important. That's the place that's the most successful, that creates the most change in your heart. Right? That's the place we really need to work. He says, be democratic. You know, don't distinguish between one person and another. You know, they're all a reflection of your mind. So do the work. It says those people around you, that's where the rubber meets the road. You know, that's where you have to do your work. And he says, think of yourself as a craftsman or an artisan, right? You can make a kind of a game out of this. It's my job to do this. It's my job to help other people. You know, it's a work of art when I'm able to actually do it. You know, like the little boy who's being Santa Claus, and he puts the slippers out there for this woman, and the woman comes out like feeling so wonderful because she's got these slippers on her feet. You know, he can think of that as what I have created. That's my work of art, the happiness in the heart of this other person. You know, it's your job to do that. It's your piece of art. He said we could create a museum, right? A Bodhisattva museum, and in it we can have all of these stories about the great works of art that people have done, you know. And we could have next to it a museum, and this one's a museum, a historical museum of all the mental afflictions that we've gotten rid of, you know, and there could be a picture of someone being jealous and then the story underneath of how they have conquered their jealousy and they no longer feel that in their hearts, you know. So it can become this game in your own mind and in your own heart to do these wonderful things for other people. So, in summary, you must learn to practice these two most important bodhisattva ideals. Treat others and yourself exactly the same. Your pain and their pain is of equal importance, and your happiness and their happiness is of equal importance. And then the second, exchange yourself and others. Fight for other people's happiness and to remove their suffering. before you take care of your own needs. We must start with all the little good deeds and build up our capacity. Your craft will become creating happiness in other people's hearts. And you'll become a Bodhisattva factory, producing joy and happiness all around you. Your quest is for the ultimate happiness of all beings, and it's a glorious quest. So remember, the total amount of happiness that exists in the world has come from wanting to make others happy. And the total amount of suffering that exists in the world has come from wanting to make yourself happy. Aw. I had a song prepared for you.
Wow.
But now I have to find it. Oh. Come on. Here. All right, this was a TV show from a long time ago, I guess. And this guy was called Gomer Pyle in this show.
And so, ladies and gentlemen, I am proud to present Marine Private First Class Gomer Pyle. To dream the impossible dream, to fight the unbeatable foe, to bear with unbearable sorrow, to run where the brave dare not go. The unrightable wrong, to love your chase from afar.
Oh, what happened? Anyway. Thank you.
Sergeant Carter, I got my voice back. I can.
Anyway, the idea is
Fine.
you know, we may think that we're not capable of doing this. You saw Gomer when he went out on the stage, it was like, oh, you know, look at the audience and look at the orchestra, and am I capable of doing this, you know? So we may think that we're not capable of doing this. We may think we don't have the capacity to expand ourselves out like this. And we don't have the capacity to be aware of our mental afflictions and to work with them. And, you know, it all seems so overwhelming. But this is our quest, right? To follow that star. No matter how far, you know, we're going to do it. We're going to get there. And there's a line in there that says, if I follow this star, I know when I'm laid to rest, my heart will be at peace. You know. So follow that star, no matter how hopeless, no matter how far. Okay, so our meditation for today is exactly the same as it has been. You know, it's to look at where things are coming from, to think about how most people don't even question that, you know. And then I was thinking, and it's basically the same thing, right? To those last two lines, that all the happiness in the world comes from helping others, and all the suffering in the world comes from thinking only of yourself. That's part of that meditation also. Okay.
Sashi
Puki Jukshin Neto Tram Mirabling Shin Yunde Yampadi Sange Shindu Mikte Wargi Drokumanda Shiva Chupashu Irangurana Mandala Kamyataya Gewandi Keoku Sonam Yeshe Zogzogshi Sonam Yeshe Lejoe Dampar Kuni Toparsho. And then for each of us to do our own personal dedication of all the goodness that you have created here. Thank you. Sorry. Oh, thank you. I was just about to apologize if it was boring.